Before a script is used for TV or film, it goes through several editing steps. Sometimes the task at hand might prove to be rather tricky, but the NCIS writers always found a way to make sure Gibbs, played by Mark Harmon, sounded genuine in each episode. There's a good reason why Mark Harmon's portrayal of Leroy Jethro Gibbs on NCIS is a fan favorite. So let's find out how they did it. First off, let's talk about Gibbs. Leroy Jethro Gibbs on NCIS is a character surrounded by mystery and drama. Our guy possesses the polished professionalism of a youthful Agent K from Men in Black, while also being the same age as a modern Agent K. Gibbs's adherence to nearly monk-like quiet somehow is one of the most significant aspects of his personality. There's much to explore when it comes to this particular character, and the fact that writers never 100% told us his story makes it just that alluring. He doesn't offer praise, keeps to himself, and overall gives off the impression of a new girlfriend's dad who you've just met and who hasn't moved in 20 minutes, right? NCIS has teased viewers with questions about Gibbs' life for entire seasons, dangling it like a dessert to someone craving a sugar rush. Off the top of our heads, how does he get his boats from the basement? Why was McGee shot by him? And really, how does the guy move his boats from the basement? Up next, how did the writers manage to make him sound so authentic? Some characters in films and television shows are supposed to be flamboyant and verbose. Some people, though, can speak little and still convey a lot. One of those figures is Leroy Jethro Gibbs. Leroy Gibbs earned a reputation for being tough yet reserved, and he never felt the need to speak more than was necessary during his run on the show. Instead, he communicated a lot with simple nods, gestures, and glances. A minimal guy, you see, but Gibbs's somber demeanor made it difficult to write his dialogue. How did the writers make him seem real then? Looper claims that they continued to employ a Gibbs pass on the script even after it was finished. Next, what on earth is the Gibbs pass? The Gibbs pass assisted the writers in deciding which lines of conversation from the characters should be trimmed or removed. Yep, you heard that right. Nonverbal actions were used in place of speech by the writers. They had to mix his speaking and nonverbal indications or gestures because they couldn't fill an entire episode with only cues. Yeah, that does sound rather tricky now, doesn't it? In fact, back in 2014, Christopher Silber admitted to TV Guide that a sizable portion of Mark Harmon's script was cut when he started working on NCIS. He was simply told to say that with a look instead. Needless to say, Silber eventually mastered his lines and Mark mastered his looks as they both began to understand the character's motivations. But holy cakes, imagine as an actor, there's a chunk of dialogue in your script that you're supposed to say with a look. Acting, man. Coming up, what's the one secret that the NCIS just couldn't keep? There's one very important secret that Gibbs was unable to keep from his coworkers. According to the saying that goes, the best way to keep a secret is to keep it to yourself, Gibbs has always been characterized as the type of man who reminds himself in the mirror what snitches get. But this secret manages to see the light of day. The family-like team at the Naval Criminal Investigative Service finds out that Jethro Gibbs is more than just the father figure in the season 16 episode and executioner. Instead, they'd spend the rest of their lives in an impossible frenzy of father issues after finding out that Gibbs is also a cold-blooded murderer. Now, we know this isn't a surprise to many, but it needed to be said. Up next, so what's the backstory behind this? Longtime viewers already knew that Gibbs had been married a few times and that his first wife, Shannon, had been murdered in the early 1990s. She and her daughter Kelly were being escorted by a federal agent as she prepared to testify against violent drug dealer Pedro Hernandez. Hernandez shot the agent operating the vehicle while it was in motion, also killing Gibbs's adorable and cheerful child. Truly a scene that broke all our hearts. After this horrible crime, Gibbs went on a Wyatt Earp retaliation spree, seizing control of the situation by hunting down and killing Hernandez. The investigation ended without any charges being brought against him, even though he left behind sufficient evidence to connect him to the vigilante killing. So why wasn't he arrested? Well, the answer is the same as always, because of some shady government case of teamwork making the dream work. That ended with Hernandez walking free. Now, where is our Leroy Gibbs right now? A few weeks after Gibbs gave up his position as the MCRT's director, the FBI declared it had an arrest warrant for him. We watch as Leroy visits Alaska in the episode Great Wide Open to follow up on a tip regarding a series of enigmatic deaths. After finishing his inquiry, the FBI agent released him and no charges were filed. At the end of the episode, Gibbs says he won't go back to his house or his job because he hasn't been at peace in a long time like in Alaska. The unfinished exit gave Harmon the option of returning to NCIS, and for us to expect more. But even if he doesn't, you'll all be happy to know that while you may not see Mark on your screen, he's still very much a part of the NCIS behind the scenes. Harmon is now doing well as the show's executive producer and is still an integral part of the NCIS family. That's not all. In a statement, showrunner Stephen Binder teased that Mark continues to be a vital part of the show's fabric as the executive producer and a beloved friend. He added that staying true to the characters has always served as their compass, the stories they tell, and the journeys taken by them. Leroy Jethro Gibbs should always be taken into consideration, as longtime viewers of the program may have noticed over the years. Leroy Gibbs is never out. Now for some other news of interest. Coming up, so why did Mark Harmon leave behind Gibbs? When it was revealed that Mark Harmon would be leaving NCIS after over 20 years as the show's lead, it crushed the audience, and rightfully so. At the time, the 70-year-old actor made the decision not to discuss the circumstances surrounding his departure in an interview or through a statement. But now, almost a year later, the Leroy Jethro Gibbs actor has finally spoken out. Mark got down to talk about the legacy of his character and his thoughts on how the program finished up his plot in a special featurette on the show's season 19 DVD release. He said that after nearly 2 decades on the program, he no longer believed that was the case when he remarked that the opportunity to handle new and difficult material is what kept him going back to the drama every season. He said, before emphasizing that he thinks his adored role is not retiring. The pull to play the character for Mark was always to keep it fresh and to turn it up a notch. He continued that as far as he knows, the character is residing in Alaska, before expressing his satisfaction with how things had been handled. Harmon shared that he believed it was honest and okay with this character to follow the direction it went from a plot perspective and for his arc. If Mark's happy, we're happy. Up next, let's talk about some of the most heartbreaking moments our friend Leroy went through. Mark Harmon, a star of NCIS, portrayed Special Agent Gibbs for more than 400 episodes over 18 seasons. It's easy to say that the character had more heartache than his fair share throughout that nearly 2-decade career. For several seasons, NCIS made it apparent that former supervisory agent Mike Franks was Gibbs's oldest and best buddy. After being stabbed, Mike becomes the newest victim of the port-to-port killer at the episode's conclusion. Fans found it difficult to watch Gibbs lose his friend in such a heartbreaking way, even though he was already sick and dying and Gibbs was constructing his casket. But we did see Mike again after this. He frequently reappeared in later seasons as Ghost Mike, a manifestation of Gibbs's subconscious brought on by his own lasting regret and devastation over the passing of his comrade. Ghost or human, it's always good to see Mike again. Lastly, here's a little fun fact. Even though it's difficult to imagine anybody else in the legendary position, rumors claim that the casting directors almost chose a different actor to lead in the JAG spin-off. Harrison Ford was reportedly considered for the part, according to the long-running naval drama's IMDb trivia section. Mark was then cast in the lead part after Harrison, for whatever reason, decided not to sign on the dotted line. That's not all. The squad finds itself on a case that is uncannily similar to the narrative of the 1997 blockbuster, and in a hint to what might have been, Harrison and his movie Air Force One are mentioned in the series' pilot episode. Gibbs is walking through a plane when he notices the similarities and exclaims, "This is in the movie. Harrison is sitting right here." How fitting. That's a wrap. Let us know in the comments below what your favorite Gibbs moment is. Hit like and click that subscribe button and we'll be back with another video